In the beginning, there was nothing, no earth, no sky, only endless darkness and silence. Until the void was torn open, that rift was Ginnungagap, where ice and fire faced each other across a bottomless chasm. To the north, Niflheim breathed mist and frost. To the south, Muspelheim boiled with fire and lava. In that age, there was only bitter cold and scorching heat. When cold mist met searing venom, foul waters in the chasm began to writhe, and finally congealed into the grotesque, colossal, primordial giant Ymir. At the other end of the void, the primeval cow Alkumla was born. She simply kept licking the salty ice, and the shadow within drew ever closer to waking. Under her tireless tongue, the figure in the ice broke free at last. Buri stepped out of frost and salt, and from him the true bloodline of the gods began. Buri's son, Bor, met Bestla, daughter of the frost giants, on the barren borderland. There, the blood of order and the blood of chaos were joined, and the source of all stories was born.
From their union, 3 great lives were born: Odin, Vili, and Ve. Inheriting their father's divinity and their mother's giant blood, they were destined for greatness. Time meant nothing in the void. The brothers grew swiftly into powerful gods. No longer content to merely exist in darkness, they turned their gaze toward the sleeping primordial giant, realizing that a new order required destruction to begin. On a battlefield of mist and venom, Odin, Vili, and Ve at last stood before Ymir, resolved to use the primordial giant's blood to carve out a new order. When their weapons fell, Ymir's life was severed. His blood became the sea, his flesh the land, his bones the mountains and cliffs, his skull the sky, his murky brain the clouds. Ever since, the world beneath us has carried the shadow of a killing. Upon this corpse-shaped earth, the gods gave breath and thought to 2 pieces of wood, and so the first man, Ask, and the first woman opened their eyes by the waves. From void to chasm, from the giant's birth and fall, to corpse-made mountains and sea, and wood turned to humankind. The framework of the world is set and marked from the start by violence and sacrifice. Next, we will see how the gods arrange this world of blood and bone. After Ymir's body became the earth, the world finally had land to walk upon, though it was still rough and desolate, like a corpse not yet cold. Mountains were broken bones, stones were hardened flesh, rivers were blood not yet fully stilled,
and even the air carried a faint tang of iron, a reminder of the price behind it all. Upon this vast remains, the gods began to add new layers of order to the world, and the most crucial of these was to set time itself in motion. They took unquenchable flames from the edge of Muspelheim to fuel the future sun and stars, laying the foundation for all light yet to come. To let that fire safely travel the sky, the dwarves forged the sun chariot and the sun's metal frame, binding the searing flame to its course. Under the gods' design, the sun crossed the newborn world for the first time, its light sweeping over mountains and seas, sharpening what had only been vague shapes. Soon after, the moon was set into the sky to trade places with the sun, and day and night were clearly divided for the first time. The world was no longer one long dusk. The sun and moon did not move freely. Two ravenous wolves were set to chase them, driving them along a fixed path across the sky. It is this hunted pace that marks the rhythm of day and night and makes time march forward in the minds of mortals. Once light and darkness had their order, the gods plucked sparks from the night and cast them high into the heavens, fixing them as stars. The stars spread across the vault like countless tiny fires lit inside a skull, guiding lost travelers and future voyagers. Under this light, the corpse world slowly became a place that could be walked on and lived on, yet it was still empty of people, filled only with waves and wind. Until the gods found two ordinary pieces of driftwood on the shore, one straight, one slightly curved, washed up against the bones of Ymir. They gave these logs breath, awareness, and form, changing them from unknowing wood into beings that could think and feel. Thus, the first man, Ask, and the first woman opened their eyes in the cold sea wind, staring in confusion at this world shaped from a corpse. They had no shells or claws, only fragile bodies and curious eyes. In the gods' sight, that frailty was both a danger and a new responsibility. With light, time, and humankind now present, the shape of the world grew clearer, but the gods would soon see that light and land alone were not enough to keep this new race alive. In the chapters to come, they will carve out a dwelling place for humans and mark off more realms among the branches and roots of the world tree. After the gods lit the sun and moon, time began to flow slowly across the land, day and night alternating, tides rising and falling. On this harsh earth, the first humans learned to block the wind with wood and stone, and to drive back darkness with fire. Their camp, on the scale of the world, was no more than a tiny spark. They hunted, built shelter, and guarded their fire from the wind, yet beyond the reach of its light, every gust sounded like something drawing near. Beyond Midgard lay the giants' lands. Behind those mountains and storms lived the beings who had once battled the gods. For these frail humans, that direction meant dangers they could not imagine. High above the clouds, Asgard now hung secure over the world. From there, Midgard was only a small ring of land encircled by sea. The gods knew the wooden man and woman represented a new possibility. If giants and sea monsters were allowed to cross into Midgard, humans would be devoured in short order. So they again took from Ymir's remains, choosing the brow bones that had once shielded his eyes, and raised those vast bones from the sea to become a new defense. Under the three brothers' power, one colossal bone after another rose from the sea, circling Midgard until they closed into a ring above the waves. Bone alone was not enough. The gods carved runes on the inner face, turning the wall not just into stone, but into a barrier that storms could strike, yet not shatter. Outside the wall still lay the giants' lands and monsters, where storms raged without rest. Inside, humans were still fragile, but at last they had a small ground where they could fear and dream. Behind the newly raised bone wall, humans felt a trace of safety at night. The wind still howled, but they knew they were no longer wholly exposed to giants' gaze and the sea's teeth. Above the clouds, the gods made themselves a new home, Asgard, a fortress hanging in the sky, from which they could both watch over Midgard and meet threats from the giants' realms. Before this hall, Odin would lead the gods and uphold order, yet he knew that under the shadows of giants, monsters, and fate, any balance was only temporary. To link the gods' realm with the world of humans, they laid a bridge of light and divine power across the sea of clouds, Bifrost. At the head of the Rainbow Bridge stands Heimdall, the Watcher, who they say can hear grass growing and almost never sleeps while on guard. Walking down Bifrost is like treading a spine of light from the realm of gods to the realm of mortals. Along it, the gods can reach Midgard in moments. At the world's center, a vast tree rises from the depths through the earth, its branches holding up the sky and its roots sinking into darkness. This is the world tree, Yggdrasil. Seen from above, its roots form a tangled web of light, each glowing point a realm of its own. In the chapters ahead, we will follow these routes to visit each world in turn.
Among the branches and roots of the world tree lie 9 realms where gods, giants, humans, elves, dwarves, and even the dead each dwell in their own domain. Near the high branches hangs Asgard, the stronghold of the Aesir. From here, war, strategy, and rule are carried to the other worlds. A little lower lies a land bathed in gold and green light, Vanaheim, whose valleys and hills breathe peace and plenty. Many tales of wealth and harvest are tied to those riverbanks. Life there moves far slower than on the battlefield, yet it determines who survives the long winters. Higher and brighter still is a realm shaped almost entirely of light and grace, Alfheim, home of the Light Elves. They move like wind along bridges and treetops woven of light. Many stories say that inspiration and omens are merely sparks they dropped by accident. Beneath these lofty realms, Midgard rests in the middle branches, encircled by a wall of bone. Humans do not yet know they are only one small part of the 9 worlds. Farther out lies Jotunheim, land of giants, where mountains rise like walls and fjords sink beyond sight. Legends of storms and quakes often begin here. Some giant clans light their fires on icy coasts, fighting over prey and land in snow and fog. In their rough strength and size, they seem to belong to a different world than humans. At one edge of the cosmos lies Niflheim, a realm of freezing mist and ice crystals, from which many stories say the first cold flowed into the primordial void. Opposite it is ever-burning Muspelheim, where the fire giant Surtur grips his sword and waits in his realm until the world's final day. Among the lower rocks and shadows lies Svartalfheim, also called Nidavellir, whose caves hide the forges of dwarves and dark elves. Many of the greatest divine weapons were forged here. The sun chariot was only the beginning. Others, yet to be made, will shape battles and fate. At the very roots of the tree, where light barely reaches, lies Helheim, land of the dead, its gray ravines and slow, cold river filled with chill and gloom. It is said that hell rules there, half like a living woman and half like a decayed corpse, silently standing before her crooked hall, waiting for the souls brought to her. Not all dead go to Helheim. Some who fall in battle are carried by Valkyries to Asgard's feasting hall. The 9 realms are not isolated islands, but a web under tension. Gods and giants, humans and the dead, even the smallest elf or dwarf tug unseen at its strands. All these pullings together form what we call fate, and many traces of that fate begin at a single pool by the tree's roots, the Well of Urðr. At one of the world tree's roots lies a quiet pool, the Well of Urðr, from which many tales of fate begin. By the well, 3 beings called the Norns watch the water day after day. Each is tied to one of these, what has been, what is, and what may yet be. Some say they twist unseen possibilities into thread and carve key moments onto wooden slats, dropping them into the well so the marks can climb the tree's veins. They water the roots with the well's water, marking certain lines, places that may one day bend or break, though all other beings will see them only as chance. Even Odin, Lord of the gods, could not ignore the question of fate after creation and war. He knew strength and will alone could not secure the ending. Kneeling by the well, he stared into its surface and saw, first of all, himself. Not an enemy or beast in its reflection. The water first threw back what had already been, the violence of creation, the moment Ymir fell. Blood becoming sea, and his corpse the world's hills and plains. Then it spread out the present, gods feasting and plotting, giants held at bay by distant peaks, humans huddled by tiny fires, and the dead queuing in dim halls. Next, fragments of the future burst forth, wolf shapes catching their long-chased prey, sun and moon seized in their jaws, light torn from the sky, plunging the world into darkness. The world tree shook, cracks spreading from bark to roots. Some realms dropped like overripe fruit from its branches, their lights flickering on and off. Along a battle line with no visible beginning, gods and giants clashed again, with Einharjar and monsters fighting side by side. The famed names of song here were only silhouettes about to fall. Among all the shards, one image held him, a wolf vast enough to blot out the sky, and himself standing before it without retreat.
When the surface stilled again, his heart was still trapped in those visions. He knew they were not dreams he could dodge, but a written stretch of fate. The Norns seldom explain or defend anyone, yet a brief pause and a heavier stroke of the knife was answer enough. It was not his first time facing the fact of his own fall, but this time he chose to accept those fragments and, in the time he had, push the world as far as he could toward his chosen path. He left the well not with clear answers, but with heavier questions. For the Lord of the gods, knowing he would die, did not mean withdrawing. The marks in the water continued to run through the tree like an invisible pulse, beating through the 9 worlds. No one could know which beat would change everything. Above, Odin began to look on the 9 worlds with new eyes. Below, humans simply counted the stars, unaware on which carved slat their names were already written.